It happens to everyone. Waiting in line for your morning coffee, you scroll social media and news on your phone. What you find depresses you. Thousands of migrants are fleeing a civil war, risking their lives only to be turned back at borders. Speculations have sent the housing markets into a frenzy, and employment numbers are tumbling down. Journalists have uncovered a decades-long cover-up of child abuse by coaches and doctors within competitive gymnastics in your country. Closing the news app, you open your family group chat. Maybe one of your siblings has posted something funny, and at this rate, you could use some cheering up. The group chat has blown up overnight, and what you see makes your heart sink. Bushfires are raging again, and there's one burning only 2 suburbs over from where your cousins live. Everyone is frantic with worry. At this point, you walk away, coffee in hand, tense, miserable, and confused. You think, this can't go on. Something needs to be done. Someone needs to step up. We need a plan to fix all this social injustice, economic chaos, and environmental destruction. This is where the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, come in. Fixing the kinds of problems that bring your entire day down in the morning coffee line can't happen in just one way. The SDGs cover sustainability from different angles: socially, economically, and environmentally. They set global goals for the 3 Ps: people, planet, and prosperity. The SDGs form the heart of the 2030 Agenda, an action plan adopted by all 193 countries of the United Nations. They call for decent jobs, quality education, good health, gender and income equality, clean energy and water, biodiversity, and climate action. They aim to reach sustainable development by 2030. Governments play a key role in achieving these goals, but they're not the only players. Businesses, civil society, Indigenous leaders, academia, and the general public all contribute as well. You might wonder where they came from. The SDGs were born in 2012 at the Rio+20, a UN conference on sustainable development in Rio de Janeiro, which was the largest conference ever held by the UN. Until 2012, there were different international agreements that dealt with environmental challenges such as climate change and biodiversity loss. And there were the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, that aimed to achieve certain social targets in developing countries by the year 2015. The countries meeting at Rio+20 decided that a more comprehensive set of universal goals was needed to tackle the urgent social, economic, and environmental challenges facing the world. This kicked off the broadest consultation ever run by the UN. An unprecedented effort was made to get input from as many people as possible, particularly those who don't often get a say in international agreements. Over 10 million people around the world participated in the consultations and helped shape the SDGs. Apart from national governments, major stakeholder groups that were consulted included women, children and youth, Indigenous peoples, NGOs, local authorities, workers and trade unions, business and industry, scientific and technological community, and farmers. I am pleased to share some good news for people and planet, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said to a packed room of press delegates. The good news? After 3 years of negotiations and debate, 193 countries had agreed to a set of development goals more bold and ambitious than anything that has come before them: the SDGs. The due date for the SDGs is the year 2030, which makes the 2020s the decade to deliver. But how can we know if progress on any of these monumental issues has been made? The 17 SDGs are built on an evidence-based framework of 169 quantitative targets and 232 indicators that accompany them. This ensures that the SDGs are clear, concise, time-bound, and measurable, which helps governments and decision-makers to include the SDGs in their planning. This means that we can keep track on each of the SDGs' progress. To achieve the SDGs, all countries are expected to set up policies and investment plans, and to use the targets and indicators to track their progress. They then report their progress to the UN. This is done through voluntary national reviews, VNRs, with a selection of countries reporting each year. Most countries, including Australia, have already submitted their first VNR. Governments are crucial in achieving the SDGs because they create and finance policies that support the goals. But all stakeholders have an important role to play. Industries and businesses in finding solutions for goods and services that align with the SDGs, and communities and individuals in supporting SDG initiatives and in holding governments and the private sector to account. Education, research, and innovation are all essential to achieve the SDGs, so universities, with their ability to create and disseminate knowledge and solutions, play an absolutely vital role. You can probably already tell that reaching the SDGs will be no small feat. All responses, from the global to the national to the local, even down to the individual, need to be coherent and aligned. But progress to date has been slow, so that it becomes very clear now that a much deeper, faster and more ambitious response is needed from governments, businesses and communities. Many experts say that in order to achieve the SDGs, we need societal transformations now that are unprecedented in human history and which represent a profound departure from business as usual. You may feel like the challenges are too big and too many. After all, you're just one person. But think about it this way. Every time you spend money, you have an opportunity to spend your money better. Every time you talk to someone, you have an opportunity to challenge their ideas for the better. You can seize these opportunities every day, 365 days a year. And of course, every couple of years, you have the opportunity to vote for the better. Not just in national elections, but in local ones too. That is an immense potential that lies with you and every other individual. The SDGs give us a roadmap for making the right choices and arriving at the right answers. Don't forget, together, we are 7.8 billion people. Together, we can make big changes happen.
We can be.
We must be
the first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done.
The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
Where no one wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die of
diseases we know how to cure.
And where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
where everyone
goes to school.
And education gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive
and be powerful
and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is headed back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets
at home, at school, and at work.
We will live in a world where there's
sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light, and power for the whole planet.
without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
and new wealth.
lead to decent jobs
For everyone.
And we will live in a world
where our industry,
our infrastructure, and our
best innovations
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
we will live in a world
Where prejudices and extremes of inequality
are defeated.
Inside our countries
And between different countries.
Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back from
climate change.
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas. We'll restore
and protect
life on land,
The forests,
Animals,
the earth itself.
With peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
where all countries and we their people
Work together.
partnerships of all kinds
to make these goals a reality.
These are the United Nations global goals.
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Okay, top of the morning to you, great ones joining us from every part of Nigeria. I believe it's a wonderful Friday morning over there. And it's a joy to have you on this call this morning, the second week of the SDG Advocate Program. And once again, I want to congratulate each and everyone that are participating on this program because it's a life transforming activity which you are really engaging in. And I believe you are all prepared for today's session. My name is Emmanuel Laoluwoyo. Today, we'll be having two different sessions today. And the first session will be led by Dr. Tenny. And before I'm going to talk about Doctor, we are blessed to have you this morning on the call, ma. Thank you for all you do, all prepared for today's session, and try as much as possible to note great things and also share the knowledge which you are going to get through the masterclass session today. Share with your friends and family. Let them know more about the SDGs. Let them know about the various dimensions of sustainability, either economic, social, or environmental. Yeah, this morning, like I mentioned, we are having Dr. Tenny Badehodu, who is a graduate of estate management from the Federal University of Minna, with a PhD in housing from University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Doctor holds a master's degree in GIS and also an MSc in estate management from both University of Lagos. And her main research interest is in environmental sustainability. I'm so glad that we have a lot of people, a lot of facilitators that are just more concerned about the environment. Yeah. So, and she builds in the built environment, and she refers herself to an environment enthusiast. She is currently a lecturer in the Department of Estate Management and Valuation at Shaba College of Technology, Lagos. We are glad to have you this morning. Good morning, Dr. Tenny.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, ma'am.
Okay. Good morning, Emmanuel, and good morning to everyone on the call. I'm happy to be here this morning. I'm happy for this opportunity. Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going straight to your session, which we are going to run for 45 minutes, while we use the remaining 15 minutes for questions and answer. Though if you have your question, we appreciate you just use the comment section to drop your questions or comments, whereby the program manager can share it with Dr. Tenny to further attend to them. Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you so much. Once again, good morning. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I always say that every time I have the opportunity to speak about sustainability, it excites me because it's something that I have really come to love. I've come to love researching and also disseminating knowledge about. We are all students when it comes to sustainability. Every day new research keeps on happening. We keep on discovering new things. So I don't believe that there's anybody that can actually say they're an expert in this field. But of course, because some of us have been working on it for a while, we tend to know more than others. And then the beauty is that we need to share this knowledge. I always like to say that with issues of especially environmental sustainability, which is where I specialize in, it's not the kind of knowledge that you want to have and hoard, because the effects of a degrading environment is not selective. The effects can be felt by all and sundry. So as much as we know, we want others to know, because the truth is that it is when we now act together, or your own small action, my own small action, the other person's small action, is what comes together to give us a whole, as a whole, a better environment. So in light of that, I'm going to share my screen. So just hang on a moment while I share my screen. Okay. All right, can you see my screen now? Please, I need to be sure you can see my screen. I need feedback, please. Can you see my screen? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, so this morning I'm going to be speaking about climate solutions and sustainable energy. And by the time we finish, by the time we're done with this presentation, these are some answers, some questions that we should be able to provide answers to. Why are we here? Where exactly are we talking about this topic? What are the issues? What are the goals? What exactly is sustainable energy? Who is doing what? And what can we, as individuals and collectively, what can we also do about sustainable energy? So, why are we here? So this, late last year, there was the World Economic Forum, which brought together various world leaders to speak about things that concern the economics of countries. And not surprisingly at all, climate change was a key talking point at this forum. Now, here I have a quote by the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol, who was also in attendance. And this is what he had to say. He said, we're in the middle of the first global energy crisis. In the 70s, it was the oil crisis. And now we have an oil crisis, a natural gas crisis, a coal crisis. All prices are skyrocketing and energy security is a priority for many governments, if not all. So that is just is not to scare us, but to show us the severity of the issues at hand. So we are here today to talk about sustainable energy. Why exactly are we talking about energy? What is the problem? Here is one good reason to have this presentation, because there is a global energy crisis, okay? Unless you're not in Nigeria today, we are all at one time or the other facing issues of petrol scarcity. The queues on the road in my own city where I live in Lagos, the queues are killing, you know, and I'm sure it's just a reflection of what is happening around many cities in the country. Electricity supply in 2022 must have been the worst in maybe the past 10 years. The national grid kept on collapsing at various times, maybe up to 4 or 5 times last year. The power supply went down to 0, you know, and that was in the midst of fuel scarcity. It was also in the midst of rising fuel prices. It was also in the midst of rising electricity tariffs. So as you can see, all these things come together to show that there's a crisis. And that is just mainly economic and social. Those problems I have just mentioned are mainly economic and social. We also have to consider the environmental crisis, because what it means is that when people cannot get their energy supply or their electricity supply from the mains, they may have to turn to alternative sources. In many cases, those alternative sources are not good for the environment. So that is why it's important for us to have a discussion like this. So what exactly are the issues? A large percentage of energy today is powered by fossil fuels. Okay, so someone may be wondering, what exactly are fossil fuels? So fossil fuels are found inside the Earth's crust, and they are usually burned to produce energy. So fossil basically means, and fossils are basically residues of things that have been in the earth, maybe that have been buried in the earth for a long period of time, maybe for millions of years, and they've now turned into some form of raw material. So when we're talking fossils, we're talking of things like crude oil, we're talking of things like coal. All those things are fossil fuels. When they are burnt, they produce energy. And the third box here says the burning of fossil fuel releases carbon into the atmosphere. So like we said, fossil fuels most times, and you can't use them in their raw states. They need to be burnt before they can produce energy. So for instance, petrol. Petrol on its own, lying inside a container, does not produce any form of energy. But when petrol is poured into a car or into your generator, there's a whole process that burns that petrol for it to release the energy that the car or the generator needs. In the process of burning that fuel, carbon is released into the atmosphere, okay? And this carbon actually pollutes the atmosphere. The next box says carbon, along with some other elements, make up greenhouse gases. If you're not already familiar with the term, there's no how you can talk about environmental sustainability and climate change and greenhouse gas will not come up in the discussion. Accumulation of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere causes increased atmospheric temperature. So some of the other things that you hear, and I usually tell people when I talk, it's very important that we familiarize ourselves with these terms so that when we're speaking from an informed place. People know that you actually know what you're talking about. So one of the other things that we usually hear when the discussion of climate change comes up is global warming. So basically, what is global warming? Global warming is an increase in the atmospheric temperature, so there's a reference temperature. It's usually referred to as the pre-industrial times, many years ago. So usually that is the index, that is the reference point. And then when they've been taking average atmospheric temperatures from that period till now. And there has been a steady increase from that period till now. There has been a steady increase in the atmospheric temperature. And why is that? That is because the greenhouse gas, so what the greenhouse gas does is that it acts like a blanket. Okay, so imagine that in cold weather, say in the harmattan, you now you cover yourself, you go to bed and you cover yourself with a blanket. The idea of the blanket is that it keeps heat trapped under the blanket so that it keeps you warm. When you remove the blanket, you get cold. But as long as the blanket is there, you feel warm because it has trapped heat to your body. This is exactly how the greenhouse gas works. So it's like a blanket it's an invisible blanket in the atmosphere. Okay. Now the thicker, what it does is that as the sun radiates, it absorbs that sun and keeps it in the atmosphere. So the thicker your blanket is, the warmer you're likely to be. The more greenhouse gas you have in the atmosphere, the hotter we're likely to be. Okay. And greenhouse gas will continue to increase as long as we have carbon emission. As long as there's more carbon going into the atmosphere, as long as people are still using their generators, as long as cars are still moving and burning fuel, carbon keeps on going. As long as factories are doing their production, carbon will keep on going into the atmosphere and increasing greenhouse gas. So imperatively, what that means is that we will continue to experience global warming unless we find a way to reduce greenhouse gas. And the best way to reduce greenhouse gas is to reduce carbon emission to its barest minimum. Okay, so like I said, this is leading to global warming, which in turn is triggering climate change. Now, because the heat is staying in the atmosphere, it is distorting climate patterns. Okay, the whole world is one ecosystem, whether we like it or not. Everything depends on everything. Okay, so if you are not experiencing rain when you ought to experience rain, it's because all the other factors are not acting as they're supposed to act. Okay, if you are feeling heat more than necessary, because all the other factors are not acting as they're supposed to act. Now, in 2015, the United Nations set global targets to keep atmospheric temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So what this means is that there has been global growing concern about the constant rise in atmospheric temperature. And various scientists and professionals and experts have done the simulations and they've done the calculations, and we found out that if our global temperature should rise above 1.5 degrees above that pre-industrial levels. So let's assume that pre-industrial level was X degrees Celsius. By the time our current atmospheric temperature should enter X plus 1.5 degrees Celsius, there's no assurance that life can be sustained on the planet. There's no assurance that life can be sustained on the planet. The sad news is that we have been, even after 2015, after these targets were set, we still have been consistently and moving towards that target. Okay, countries are coming out to say all sorts of things that every year they would go for the climate summit. Last year they were in Cairo, 2 years ago they were in Glasgow. Every year there's a climate summit at the end of the year where different world leaders, including us, attend. And the essence of that climate summit is that they would come to say that, okay, this is what we are willing to do to reduce our greenhouse gas emission. Okay, but still every year when they get there, they find that there's been an increase. Okay, so these are the issues. I just want you to have a foundational knowledge of what is going on and why we really have to talk about sustainable energy. Now, as I said, the essence of all this is not to scare you, but rather to bring it to our notice, and so that when we're acting and when we're speaking, we're doing that from a place of knowledge. So in May 2022, the United Nations published the following report by the Meteorological Organization on their website. It says there's a 50-50 chance of average global temperature reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels in the next 5 years, and the likelihood is increasing with time. 5 years from 2022 is 2027. This is 2023. Okay, so it means that if we all don't collectively do something drastic, that target is closer than we would think it is. So like I said, this isn't to scare you, it's just, to help us be properly informed of what the issues are. Now, earlier I had mentioned that one of the major sources of carbon emission is fossil fuels. Examples of fossil fuel are coal, oil, that's our crude oil, kerosene, propane, and natural gas. And if we look at these examples, we find out that these are things that we use in our everyday lives. Okay, so we cook, we need to move around in vehicles. In our own country, for instance, there's generators, the diesel generators, the petrol generators. Propane is used in air conditioners, which is also important because why? The weather is hot a lot of times, especially now, we can see that the weather is heating up again. So there's always need for cooling around us. So these are things that we actually all need in our everyday lives. So the essence of sustainable energy now is to find a way to be able to live our lives exactly the way how we'll be living them without needing to use these things, finding alternatives to these things, and yet being comfortable in our everyday lives. Okay, so if you have a barcode scanner on your phone or your device, I'd like you to scan this barcode quickly and take a quiz. I would need some kind of feedback now.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to present the all right, so I don't know if people have been able to scan it. When you scan it, you take the quiz, your answers will appear here. Mr. Emmanuel, please, what can you see? Mr. Emmanuel.
Just in a minute, ma.
Okay. So what I can also do is to, let me see. Let me copy the link.
Okay.
And put it in the chat box so that you can also
share with them. Okay, I have the poll with me. Let me just copy it.
Have you seen the link now?
Yes, I have it now.
Okay. So I'll just share the results quickly.
So I think the link has been shared on the Zoom platform. I mean, on the YouTube platform, so we can just pick it from there and have access to it.
Okay, so please just answer the poll quickly. Your results will appear here.
So, but for further occurrence, I would suggest for those who don't have a barcode scanner on their phone, try as much as possible to download one. But she has provided the link, which we all can use. You can just click that link to take you to the poll.
Okay, so I'll just wait for a minute more just to see what the answers are looking like. Okay. All right, so this is very interesting. I hope we can all see the results. So the results here say that between, let's say, an average of 40% of the respondents or of our participants here think that solar energy is the cheapest source of energy, and 33%, let's say 30% thereabouts, think coal is the cheapest source of energy. 10% think it's wind, 10% think it's natural gas, 5% think it's biomass, and nobody thinks it is oil. So I find that very interesting. Okay, so we'll move back to our presentation now. All right, so yes, the results of the quiz, you were very correct with the quiz. So the cheapest form of energy is actually solar, and for obvious reasons. There's an infinite supply of sunlight, an infinite supply. Side by side sunlight is also wind energy, okay? In this country, we have not harnessed wind energy at all. Probably it's because of the cost of setting it up. But solar and wind energy are actually the cheapest sources of energy that are available. So it's ironic that if in this country, for instance, we have, in fact, we have the amount of sunshine we have, I'm sure other countries are hoping for, yet we are the ones suffering energy crisis the most. So let's move to the goals. So I'm aware that participants on this call are not new to the Sustainable Development Goals, because this is a whole program to educate people about the SDGs. So when it comes to sustainable energy, the goals that are most, the goals that talk to sustainable energy the most are 13 and 7. So 13 is we are trying to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. And 7 is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable modern energy for all. So, you know, what I usually say about the SDGs is that at the end of the day, they are also interlinked and intertwined, that you really cannot separate one from the other. Because if we decide to start looking at it one after the other, somehow there's a need for clean energy or sustainable energy for each of those goals. But of course, there are some goals that speak to some subjects more than the others. So we're going to, for the purpose of this presentation, we're just going to look at these two: climate action and alternative and clean energy. So what exactly is sustainable energy? Sustainable energy is energy that can be used and reused constantly without depleting the source, so that future generations can also have access to energy. At this point, I am sure that if we ask for the definition of sustainable development, all of us should be able to say that, I mean, after all, we are learning about sustainable development goals. So sustainable development simply means we are doing development presently in a way that does not jeopardize future generations from being able to exist, okay? And we're trying to filter that into every other aspect of life, okay? So sustainable energy is simply an offshoot of sustainable development. Sustainable energy is energy that can be used and reused constantly without depleting the source, so that further generations can have access to energy. I just spoke about sun, you know, no matter how many, I think they said we are 8 billion people on the earth and counting, okay? No matter how many we become on earth, there is no way we can deplete the energy that comes from the sun. There's no way, okay? So that is an example of sustainable energy. So renewable energy is sustainable energy. Renewable energy simply means that, like we said, as you're using it, it is not depleting, it's renewing itself. Okay, fossil fuel energy, they're not renewable. There is contrary to what some people believe, there is actually a limited supply of crude oil in the Earth's crust, which means that you can actually deplete it. It means that we can actually wake up one day, maybe in our lifetime, maybe not in our lifetime. We don't know. I don't have the data, but we can actually wake up one day and there would not be crude oil anymore. It is actually possible, especially with our increasing population on the earth. Okay, so anything that has the ability to be renewed after being used is known as renewable energy, and is also sustainable energy, and is also known as clean energy, especially because in the production of this energy, there is hardly any emission going out. In the production of solar energy, there's no emission going out. Now, with solar energy, I always like us to be very careful, because as clean as solar energy is, the production, I mean, it's not, it would have been nice if all you had to do was expose your cables to the sun and it will electrify your house. But there's actually a lot of things that also go into converting that energy into usable electricity. So you are talking about the solar panels, we're talking about inverters, we're talking about batteries. And the disposal of these things may also constitute some kind of environmental hazard. So that's why research is still ongoing as to the most efficient ways to harness energies from the sun. Now, this picture shows an example of renewable energy, also known as sustainable energy, that we've been talking about. So like I said earlier, wind energy, there's solar energy, there's geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is energy produced from extractions of heat within the core of the earth. So because there's a lot of geographic or geological processes that happen inside the earth, there's actually a substantial amount of heat that can be extracted from the core of the earth. So there are technologies that have been created to harness that heat and convert into electricity. Okay, and like we said, it is a renewable energy. Why? Because those processes will keep on happening. There's shifts in the core of the earth. There are all sorts of things. As long as the earth is rotating, those processes will continue to happen. So that heat will continually be available. Then we have hydro. Hydroelectric power is something that we also kind of use in Nigeria. You would have heard of the Kainji Dam, the Shiroro Dam, you know, all those are sources of hydroelectric power. And it is power that is created, you know, from movements of, from a force created from water, you know, to the water powers turbines, which also produces electricity. Biomass energy. Biomass is energy created from biological elements. Okay, so the decay of a lot of these elements actually releases gas when natural natural organisms die and are decaying. There's gas that is produced from that process, which can be harnessed to produce energy. That process is, even though it's gaining popularity in many places, has not really gained ground in Nigeria, but there are pockets of places where these things are used. For example, I'm aware that I think some of the farms in University of Ibadan and OAU actually use biomass for production of their fuel for burning things. And the biomass is gotten from animal feces, animal feces. In some places in the fresh produce markets in Lagos, I know that I'm also aware that there's a pilot project where rotten food, in markets where they sell fresh food, there's a lot of waste, bad rotten tomatoes, rotten vegetables and all that. So they have also started a pilot project where they collect all these rotten food and, harness the biogas from it. And then they use the gas to power a freezer or a refrigerator, which is now serving market people who, instead of watching your food waste, you can pay an amount of money to keep your food refrigerated till you are ready to come and sell them. So that's a very good way also to harness biomass energy. Tidal energy also has to do with water, but it is more technology, or it is more a more complex method than the hydroelectric power, because the tidal energy actually uses the force of the waves inside the sea. So there's a lot of deep sea construction that is involved in tidal energy. But all these are examples of renewable energy. So who is doing what? What this means is, so we're looking at, because like I said in the beginning, this is a global conversation. Everybody is looking at all the good big governments and all the big corporations to show leadership in this fight against climate change. So a lot of the big corporations are, have started doing all sorts of projects to show that, we are also trying to imbibe this green energy thing. So a lot of the oil companies, like you see here, you see Total Energy, ExxonMobil and Chevron, they are seriously investing in research into alternative or renewable energies. And these are companies who have gained their name, gained their money, and gained their status through fossil fuel production, extraction, production, and sale. But now, they are coming to say that, we see the need for renewable energy, we are investing in renewable energy, and so on and so forth. Now, and other big names, including Windows, Samsung, Tesla. I'm sure we all know what Tesla does. So Tesla has for years been manufacturing cars which do not use petrol at all. The cars do not use petrol at all. They use electricity, and this, they keep on researching on how to make their batteries, because what it means is that the car uses a battery which has to be recharged from time to time. And over the years, their batteries have been improving such that the cars now can move longer distances without needing to be recharged, along during the day. So there's all that. Everybody is looking at one way or the other to do to imbibe sustainable energies in their workings. In Nigeria too, we're seeing big corporations. The Nigerian Bottling Company is one of them. Nile University, Abuja. This is the picture in the middle, shows their roof, which shows this whole building is powered is totally off the national grid. That means it does not use electricity from the main national grid, produces its own electricity. And I am as you heard Mr. Emmanuel when he was reading out my profile, my specialty is in the built environment. So it means I deal with buildings, and I actually work on something we call green buildings. Okay, so basically green buildings are buildings that have no minimum to no effect on the natural environment. Now, buildings are very, very big emitters of CO2. Remember what I said in the beginning, that we need to keep our carbon emission down. The built environment alone, and when we say the built environment, we're talking about, your buildings, your roads, your infrastructure, everything that has been built on the natural environment by man is called the built environment. The built environment alone accounts for about 40% of carbon emission or greenhouse gas emission, about 40% alone. Not to talk of when you can now go into other things, maybe manufacturing and all that, but built environment alone accounts for 40%. So what it means is that if we can have a green built environment, a built environment that is environmentally sustainable, it means that we can drastically cut down carbon emission globally. So my research, my work is basically on how to make the built environment greener. And one of the things we do is we propose green buildings to people. So basically, what are green buildings? Like I said in the beginning, it's buildings that we are trying to make them as comfortable as possible, but without it needing the same amount of energy that a conventional house would need. And one of the major features of a green building would be a cut in electricity. And most times, to cut down electricity, you may even have to reduce what you need from the national grid. So we also encourage the use of solar panels. We encourage the use of natural ventilation, because sometimes the reason your house is hot is not necessarily because the weather is hot outside. It is because of the way the house has been built. Maybe the main face of the house has been built to face the sun, the rising sun in the morning. So as the sun is rising in the morning, it is shining right into the house and heating up the house. By the time the house is heated up, it means that you now need extra energy to cool it down. So we have to put ACs everywhere. We have to turn up ACs high, and all this contributes to carbon emission. But if when you're designing the building, you had taken all that into consideration and said, okay, let's put this smaller face to face the morning sun so that the heating is not as much. It reduces the cooling need of that building, and therefore you use less energy for that building. So tackling carbon emission, what I'm trying to say is that tackling carbon emission is not a one-off thing. It's not just I wake up in the morning and I say, okay, you know what, let me put one solar panel here. No, it's actually something that it's a whole process. You have to think of it holistically. So you are building a house. Before you even start building, don't wait till you finish building before you now say, okay, so what measures am I going to put in now? No. How about you start considering carbon emission from the design stage? And I'm speaking about buildings because I'm in the building, I'm in the built environment. I know that on this call, we have people in different places. We have people in the fashion industry who are also looking at more efficient ways to do their work, such that they do not need so much electricity. Okay, if it is that at a particular time of the day, there are times that you do not need to use electricity. Sometimes it can be that you can do mass production of clothes so that you don't have to put on your generator every 2 hours. When the generator is on, maybe you do everything that you need to do with electricity at that time, so that you are not emitting carbon all through the day. If by the time you reduce your carbon emission by 20%, which is very minimal. But if you reduce yours by 20%, the next person reduced by 20%, the next person reduced by 20%, we put it all together, it adds up. So in our various fields of endeavor, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a driver, whether you are whatever business it is you're doing, we should start thinking of more efficient ways to do things. Do we actually need to put on a generator and go? Actually put on an air conditioner rather, and then go just because we want to keep the place cool? Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Is it not better if we can go leave our windows open for natural air, to leave the place cool, and then when you come back, you can cool it as much as you want? So those are the things we need to start thinking about. Yes, so I always like to talk about greenwashing, okay? Because in the previous slides, I had mentioned what big corporations are doing and what some other people are doing, to show that they are also in on this sustainable energy drive. But sometimes it could be greenwashing. So what is greenwashing? Greenwashing simply means that you are presenting to everybody that you are doing something sustainable, while it is just it's just supposed to make you look good. So remember that we have mentioned that this is a global issue. And so international bodies are actually interested in seeing that a lot of people are taking on sustainable development, these sustainable development goals. So sometimes there are even benefits if they find out, oh, okay, you have a green building, there's benefits. Benefits may be things like tax cuts. Benefits may be things like you have special access to, some loans or some grants that other people may not have. It may be special recognition, that this company or this organization is going green. So sometimes there are benefits attached to these greening efforts. So because of that, there are companies that actually just present things, sometimes they share fake data and tell you, we have done so much, we have changed this, we have changed that. But where they are getting gains, maybe where they are actually getting gains truly, in other places, they are emitting more. One perfect example of greenwashing is, there's something called carbon trading. And the idea is that in the developing country, we don't emit as much as the developed countries. Why? Because we are not as industrialized as they are. So because they are more into manufacturing and all that, they tend to emit more carbon than we do. So because it is difficult for them to now reduce their emission level, because reducing their emission level to them simply means that they reduce their manufacturing or they reduce what they are doing, which is a difficult thing to do because that now tells on the economy of the country. So what they do is what they propose is carbon trading, which means that people in the developing countries who emit less, they will take the credits for the developing countries that are emitting less, and then they pay the developing countries. But at the end of the day, that's just greenwashing, because the truth of the matter is you're not doing anything. You're just paying people in developing countries to do your dirty laundry for you. So what they're saying is, you stay under industrialized. We will continue to manufacture, and then we'll pay you for being under industrialized. In my opinion, that's just greenwashing. So we also need to be careful. It's not that you are saying, no, I did not put on my AC in the afternoon. Then at night, you now put on the generator all night. What have you done? So we also need to be careful of that. So what can we do as crusaders, as climate ambassadors? What can we do? First of all, is behavioral change, and I have tried to mention that in the course of my presentation. Behavioral change may not be easy. It's not something that can be very, convenient. But like I said, all of us are going to suffer we are going to suffer the consequences of this climate change. So the earlier we all start doing our bits, the better. Behavioral change will include things like what I just said. If you're in the habit of I need to cool my room, I'm going out, I need to cool my room, I want to come back to a cool room. So you leave the AC, you are not there, you leave your electronics on, some lights are on for 24 hours, things like that. And they're not necessary. We should also take on things like carpooling. Carpooling is people in the same house are going towards the same direction. Why can't they just make plans that, okay, today, and these are things that are very common in developed countries. Okay, so today we are all going in your own car. So instead of going in 4 cars, 4 people are going in 1 car throughout the week. That also reduces the amount of carbon that is emitted. That's another change in attitude. Okay, you don't have to boil water until you need it. If you have a flask, you can pour hot water into your flask. Not that you boil water the first time you leave it, it cools down. Then you need another cup, then you boil the same amount of water. No, how about you just get a flask, boil water, pour your hot water into a flask and use it as you need it. So all these little things count. All these little things count, Take more walks. More walks are good for your body anyway. Take more walks. It's not every time you climb on a bike. Well, in a place like Lagos, there aren't even too many bikes to go on anyway. So different things like that. Then conserve all natural resources at all costs. Conserve all natural resources at all costs. Whether we like it or not, we need to go back to nature. We have destroyed nature for so long, but now we have to go back to nature because apparently they are going to be things that are going to save us. So we shouldn't be the ones destroying things. We shouldn't be the ones littering places, polluting the environment. We should be the ones speaking against it. Then learn more about renewable energies. So we can't exhaust everything about renewable energies in this presentation. It is not possible. But one thing I'm hoping that this presentation will do is to trigger you enough to say, okay, you know what, what's she's talking about? Let me even just go and learn what she's talking about. Because what now happens is that it makes you interested in research, and research, like I said, there's still so much to research when it comes to renewable energy. When it comes to solar energy, for instance, we still have to find more efficient ways to conserve the energy that comes from the sun. Because one of the challenges with solar energy is that it's daily energy. Unless you store it, once the sun is gone, that is it. So batteries are what are used to store it, but those batteries too are limited. So now there's need for research as to how we can get more efficient batteries that can store this energy for longer times so that they can be distributed. Then insist on more investment in renewables for leaders. This is election time. And this is the time that we're engaging leaders and politicians that are claiming, promising heaven and earth to us. So this is a very nice time to pressure them. What are your plans for renewable energy? You'll be surprised that a lot of them don't even know what you're talking about. So if as long as you have the chance, we should start putting it out there and asking them, challenging them. Nigeria keeps on going to the climate conference to talk about our contribution, but yet we don't see any representation of that. What do you plan to do? And then lastly, you should be a crusader for renewable energy. And anywhere you get the chance, always promote renewable energy in place of generators. It's surprising how much you would save. So one of the things that discourages people is the cost that seems to be attached to renewable energies. It's expensive, and that is the truth. It is actually expensive. But you see, one thing about it is an upfront cost that you will get back in savings over a long period of time. Okay. So imagine your money for fueling your generator, for maintaining that generator. You have to service it, you have to buy oil, sometimes the generator will even pack up in the middle of something. You will look for money and go and buy a new generator. And then power cost. In last year alone, I'm sure there must have been increase in electricity tariffs up to 3 or 4 times. Some of the times they didn't even let us know. You will just load, for those that use prepaid meters, you just find out that you load the meters and you are getting less. All these costs add up. At the end of the day, that money that you were saying is too much to buy your solar power or anything, you have spent it across the year. So what we should now be pushing for is, how can we have structures that help us to be able to buy these things easily? Okay, maybe there can be some kind of instrumental payments for solar systems for people, so that they are buying it. You are probably spending the same amount you would have spent on petrol just to buy your solar panel. That way, we are saving our money and we are also saving our environment. So I know my time is fast spent. I'm just going to stop here. If there are any questions, I'm willing to answer these questions.
Absolutely, Doctor. There are a lot of questions that are popped up. And thank you for the insightful session. Just like we have a comment from Jennifer, the facilitator is power-packed. I'm enjoying the class and learning new things. Yeah, we have to keep learning, relearn, and unlearn over and over. Thank you for the insightful session, Ma. So quickly, we read some of our questions which the PM has pasted on the comment section on Zoom here. There is a question from Annabelle. She asks that, how do we reduce carbon emissions to the barest minimum when we depend on them daily? We also talked about also in how cheap is it setting up renewable energy, especially for developing countries.
Okay.
We also have a similar question to that from Monsura Homowumi Ahmed. How is the built environment emitting CO, or as he wants to write CO2?
Okay.
So you can attend to those two questions first, or you want me to read more?
You can read. You can. Okay. So that I don't forget.
All right. There's another question from Steven. He asked that, how do we achieve sustainability in the face of the current nuclear revolution among countries of the global north, such as US, Russia, China, and North Korea? And we also have another question from Ben. Does renewable energy contribute to carbon emissions? Then Gode also asked the question at what legal action has Nigerian government take to curtail excess carbon in the air? I assume it's excess, not exercise, excess carbon in the air. So those are the questions we have as we speak.
Okay, so let me answer them as I remember. Annabelle, I'm also looking at the messages, so I'm hoping these are all the questions here. So Annabelle says, how do we reduce carbon emissions to the barest minimum when we depend on them daily? Also, how cheap is setting up renewable energy, especially for developing countries? So I had mentioned it earlier that we do depend on fossil fuel for daily existence. But you see, all that is still an issue of perception. Before the discovery of fossil fuel, humans were surviving, right? So what happens to human beings is that you find a new method and you feel, our lives cannot go on without it. I usually say that, for me, I remember that we were living our lives normally before the advent of mobile phones. But you see now, people behave like if they take your mobile phone away from you, you will just die. But you won't die, to be honest. So we depend on carbon, we depend on fossil fuel now, because that's what we have always known. And that's why I said there's still a place for research. And every day new research is coming out as to what people can do better. Look, I talked about biomass. Do you know that there are houses? These are not even big companies. There are houses, like individual domestic houses, that have stopped using gas. They don't use gas, they don't use kerosene, they use biomass. What they have done is they have built a system from their soakaway that creates gas, which they use to power their kitchen. Normal, everyday houses. So for those people, when you're complaining that, hey, gas is expensive, or the last time I went to buy gas, it has increased again, they don't understand what you're talking about. Why? Because as long as somebody is using the toilet in their house, they have gas to cook. Okay, so everything still, it depends on our mindsets and what we are used to. I mean, in my own house, we have not been on the national grid for over a year now. Has it been totally comfortable? No. I don't, because why? Because we don't get to use the AC as much as we normally would used to use it. But the truth is, what I have gained in savings cannot be quantified. So it may be uncomfortable, okay? We will have to make adjustments, but it is possible. Then how cheap? At the end, when I was closing my presentation, I already said that it is actually not cheap. Okay, because and that is normal with every new technology. Every technology that is not common will be expensive, but the more people use it, the cheaper it becomes. It sounds, or it feels expensive now because it's still, few and far between. Not many people are using it yet. The more people use it, the more they will come up with cheaper ways to make these things available. And that's why I said what we should now be pushing for is systems that make it readily available to people. Let's look at banks that can finance these things such that you can actually purchase them and do instrumental payments for them. Okay, then let me go to the next question. I think that's Damilari, who says Nigeria has almost all sources of energy, still no reliable power supply. Okay, that's a comment, not a question. Stephen, how do we achieve sustainability in the face of current nuclear revolution among countries of the global north, such as USA, Russia, and China, and North Korea? As a matter of fact, Stephen, now is the time to harness renewable energy, because what has happened with that war is that there has been a scarcity of petroleum products all over the world. So the good part, I don't know if that's the right word to use, is that it is not what is happening in Nigeria is not an isolated case. As we are facing energy crisis here, they are facing it in the West as well. Okay, but what we should now do, and what is happening in more developed countries now, is that they have now become more aggressive in looking for ways to harness renewable energy. So for us, it should be an opportunity. It should be an opportunity for us. It should be a pressure point to our government. Invest more in renewable energy. Invest, and you know, apart from the global crisis, we also have our own domestic crisis. There's the issue of oil theft here. So invest more. Remove subsidies from. I know that's a painful thing, you know, to say, but they need to remove subsidies from fossil fuels and then invest it into renewable energies. Then Jennifer, okay, thank you, Jennifer. And then Monsura says, how is the built environment emitting carbon? So you see, Monsura, this topic, if you get me started, we can spend 1 hour here because this is my comfort zone. But let me just try to summarize it. So you see, when we look at the built environment, we look at it holistically. So we will start looking at, I like to give a classic example of, imagine that you want to build a house now, okay? The first thing that you do is to purchase a land, right? When you purchase that land, what do? You clear the land so that you can build on. By clearing the land, first of all, you have displaced some natural organisms that used to be on that land. There are trees that used to be there. There are some earthworms that used to be there. There are some animals that used to be there, shrubs that used to be there. You have cleared that place. So first of all, you have distorted the ecology in that place. Then you now start building your house. You want to do your foundation. You need cement, right? Now, let's look at the carbon footprint of cement. To make cement, you have to mine the ground and then extract limestone. All that, you know, there are machines involved. So you can imagine the amount of carbon that those machines emit in the process of mining the ground and extracting limestone. Then from limestone, you now produce cement. Imagine the machines that go into production of cement and the emission from it. Whoever has taken a trip on the old road from Lagos to Abeokuta, you will always see, when you get to Ewekuru, there's always that cloud of smoke that is coming out from the factory there. So you can imagine. Then after the production of the cement, they will now have to transport that cement from the factory to where it will be sold. Imagine the truck that is transporting it, the amount of carbon that comes out of it. From the place that it is in the warehouse, it goes to the place where you want to build. There's also emission from that. Then they start building. So that is just one building material. Now imagine that the building is now finished and then you now move into the house. You need to cool the house with your AC. There's no light to put on your generator. You are cooking. All these things emit carbon. At the end of the life of the building, it has now, okay, maybe it has spent like 50, 60 years. You want to demolish it. You demolish it, that's another process. So all those things are what we put together to say that the carbon footprint of the built environment is actually the highest, plus or minus 40%. So I hope I've answered your question. Then does renewable energy contribute to carbon emission? So renewable energy itself does not contribute to carbon emission. Remember at the beginning, I said that because fossil fuels have to be burnt to produce energy, that is where the carbon comes from. So renewable energy themselves do not contribute to carbon emission. However, the equipment that go into, maybe converting the sources to energy and storing it, in the production of those things, there may be carbon emission, but the energy itself does not produce carbon. What legal actions has Nigerian government taken to curtail excess carbon in the air? So this is a matter for I'm not aware that we currently have any laws against. I know there's something in the petroleum industry but I'm not sure of how implementation has been. I'm not sure there's any serious implementation on it. So you and I will have to go back and research this. Plastic waste is one of the contributors of CO2 in Nigeria. What can we do? What can we do that's sustainable to contain the menace? Attitude change, behavioral change, and then you who is knowledgeable should learn to also, you should also learn to do campaigns against plastic. Plastic is actually a serious problem in Nigeria. The serious problem. And one of the things we can do, see, the thing is that for a body like this, we should be able to organize ourselves and speak truth to power. Okay, there are some bills that we should be able to come together and sponsor. For instance, the use of single-use nylon bags, plastic bags, which we call nylon bags in this country. In most developed parts of the world, where you go, if you enter a shop and you need to buy something, you would need to pay for the bag. If you want a nylon bag or a plastic bag, as they are called, you would have to pay for it. But here, when you enter our big departmental shops, sometimes, they would give you 3 bags. You have bought 3 items, they would give you 3 different bags. And most times when you get to what happens, you probably throw it somewhere, it ends up in the gutter, it ends up in the landfill, or ends up in the water bodies, So we also need to be pushing for these things. There should be levies attached to this. What it does is that when you are told to buy your nylon, you find out that everybody is going to the shop with their own shopping bag. Why? Because that's an extra cost that you don't need to bear. You have plenty of nylons at home. Why are you going to pay for nylon again? So those are some of the things that we can do. How do we explain the effects of carbon emission in the simplest way to people who are less educated? I think, Mr. Emmanuel, you have to plan a whole new class for that one. I don't think it is. So for people that are less educated, what you can, so when when you're teaching people, you teach them from what they know before you teach from known to unknown. So for the people that are less educated, what you do is show them the effects of carbon emission. Okay, when you show the effects of carbon emission, then you now tell them what is causing these things and why you should stop these things. I think that's about the easiest way, the simplest way I can summarize it. With millions of cars on our Nigerian roads, car remains one of the biggest sources of emission in Nigeria. What can be done? For that one, for now, like I said before, in more developed countries, what they're doing is they're tending more now towards electric cars. Electric cars is becoming a very big deal in those countries. But then you need to have constant electricity for electric cars to work. So for now, our best bet, our lowest hanging fruit as a country is to improve our mass transportation system. Improve our mass transportation system. The reason why everybody is putting cars on the roads is because it's not easy to move around. In a city like London, you can afford to live in London for years without owning a car. Why? Because movement is very easy. There's a train that goes to every stop. At the stop, there's probably a bus going everywhere. The movement is easy. So our best bet now is to improve mass transportation. When there's good transportation, not everybody, to be honest, Lagosians or Nigerians don't like to be stuck in traffic. It's tiring. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. But it's about the easiest way to move around. So our mass transportation system, thank God for what's happening in Lagos now, the implementation of the Blue Line. We're hoping to see more things like that. Our waterways too, they're very good ways of transportation. Plastic waste is one of the contributors of CO2 in Nigeria. Okay, I think I've answered that. How can we utilize renewable energy in a country like Nigeria and other developing countries? It's quite expensive. I've also talked about that earlier. You can refer to my earlier answers. Mr. Manuel, have I gone through the questions? Have I gone through all the questions?
I think you've read through the questions, though there's a question from Kazim, which I believe you've once answered, that's regarding plastic waste being one of the contributors of CO2 in Nigeria. What can we do to that?
Yeah, I answered that. I answered it earlier.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I think I've gone through the questions.
Absolutely. Okay. From Chiamaka, please can you?
How can we utilize renewable energy in a country like Nigeria and other developing countries is quite expensive. So she's talking about expensive, and I think I answered that, when I was saying that the reason it's expensive is because it is not yet a general system. And I mean, like phones, remember that when phones first came out, they were very elitist products. Only the very rich could use phones then. Even a SIM card, was very expensive. But as time went on and phones became more common, now SIM cards are even cheap. And you can get a phone for as little as 2,500, 3,000 naira. So the more common the technology becomes, the cheaper it will become. And that was why I said what we can do for now is to put pressure on financial institutions and government agencies to make it more accessible to everybody by, coming up with plans, maybe like, the way you can pay instrumentally for your laptop or for your phone sometimes. Maybe there can be plans like that, like I can buy a solar system and pay over a period of time, Absolutely. That's what we should be preparing them for.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tenny. Though we have a comment from Rafael. This is a masterpiece class. I actually don't have interest in climate SDG until now. This class makes me want to do research and lend a voice, especially in policy making, to ensure government's involvement. Thank you very much.
I'm glad about that.
We all are going to do that and lend our voice towards the attainment of the SDGs. Thank you very much, Dr. Tenny, for the wonderful and impactful class. Really appreciate your time this morning, and I believe we always have you around over and over again. Thank you. We, on behalf of the Leadership Council of SDS in Nigeria, really want to appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And you definitely, I know that we still have some other activity to catch up for the day. All right, you might take your leave.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Yeah. Dear participants, I believe you all enjoyed the first session, which is on climate and renewable energy. Right about now, we'll be moving to the second session, and taking that is a renowned person and a resourceful person as well, in the name of Dr. Georgina Rifata. She holds a PhD in biochemistry, and she's also the director of Benin City Window on America. Good morning, Doctor. We are so glad to have you this morning on the call. Thank you for joining, ma'am.
Good morning, Emmanuel, and good morning to all participants on the call. It's a privilege to be on the call as a facilitator. I want to appreciate the conveners. Thank you for having me. I hope within the confines of our time, we're able to do justice to what we have this morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity again.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much. Dr. Rifata will be taking the concept of sustainable development, telling us more about principles, pillars, and some key aspects we all need to know about sustainable development. Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, let me try to share my slides.
All right.
And I want to start by apologizing that I'm supposed to be on a trip. I'm the only one they are waiting for now. The vehicles are outside. So I'll just be as brief as possible. And I'll be glad if the participants can engage me more in the Q&A session, so that we'll just run through what I have. I saw your chart that the participants on this call are different from the ones we had the last time. I was just going to say we should just go straight into the Q&A session, since I already did justice to it the last time, but let me just put up the slides. 1 minute, please.
All right, ma'am. So if you have a question or comment, you can just use the comment section on YouTube platform. The program managers will pick it up from there and share with Doctor.
Okay, Emmanuel, they are saying that host disabled participants screen sharing.
Okay, you can share now. You can share now, man. Can you share now? I believe you should be able to share now, man.
Okay, I'm trying to do that now.
All right.
I hope this is the one I'm supposed to share. Let me just check. Can you see it? Can you see the screen?
Yes, we have your screen up now.
Okay, I don't know. Is it moving?
Yes, it is. It is.
So I'm on the first page, right?
Yes, but I will appreciate if you can make it a full screen.
Okay, let me try to say I can do that. Is it full now?
Yes, it is. It is, man. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So, like Emmanuel said, my name is Dr. Mrs. Georgina Erifita. I'm the Dex Officer for SDSN in Benin University chapter, and also the Director for Benin City Wind on America. Benin City Wind on America is an initiative of the US government, and it's a youth-centered space that is meant to help the youths, Nigerian youths, upscale, build capacity, develop entrepreneurial skills, and be more ready to face the wider society, especially in the face of the present economy. It's important that all our youths are able to upscale and do everything to increase their employability. So we have about 18 of them in Nigeria, and Edo State has just one of the spaces in which I'm acting as the director. The topic we are looking at this morning is the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we are focusing on the 17 goals, the targets, indicators, and pillars of the SDGs. Like I said, I will just quickly run through. Then if you have questions, we can engage more in the Q&A session. The 2030 Agenda for the goals, I believe it's an amalgamation of the 2021 agenda that was adopted in 1992, which was planet focused, and also the Millennium Development Goals that was adopted in 2020 because of the limitations that were found after the reappraisal for the 2021 agenda. So after those limitations were found, the 2020 Millennium Development Goals were adopted, and finally they were translated into the 2030 agenda that had the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I'm just going to mention them so that we can just ride on. Like I said, the 2030 agenda is both planet focused and human focused. The Millennium Development Goals was human focused. The 2021 agenda was focused. It was focused, and everyone is able to do everything in their possible best to domesticate it. I'm sure that is one of the reasons why this meeting has been convened, so that we can inspire actions amongst ourselves, amongst the youths, on possible ways to domesticate the SDGs. Like I said in my last session, I expect every youth to be running with at least one of these goals. We should all be involved. The central focus of the SDGs, of the 2030 agenda, is leaving no one behind. And that is what I think we should all be doing. We don't want anyone to be left behind. We want everyone to be involved in ensuring that the SDGs are achieved at by 2030. We are already in 2023, and we always say that this is the decade of action. So we are going to ask ourselves, for every one of us that is in the room, which of the goals are you running with? Which of the goals are you working towards actualizing? So the first goal is no poverty, and the focus is to end poverty in all its forms, everywhere in the globe. So that's the focus of the first goal, no poverty. The second goal is zero hunger, and the focus is to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Yes. The third goal is good health and well-being, and I think the overall focus is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being amongst all ages, both men, women, children, everyone. The fourth goal, quality education, is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning. Yes, lifelong learning opportunities for all. The fifth goal is gender equality, and this is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. The sixth goal is clean water and sanitation, and I believe the primary focus is to ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. We're going to the seventh goal now. Yes, the seventh goal is affordable and clean energy. And the focus is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. I said affordable. That is so important. If we look at what we are going through now, with the prices of fuel, with the fuel scarcity, you can see that that affordability is almost eroded. But we are all going to be on top of the game and do our best to see how this can be averted. Goal 8 is decent work and economic growth. And the focus is to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth that is full and productive employment and decent work for all. That's goal 8. Like I said, I'm not going to be able to expatiate on it because of the time constraint I have, but during the Q&A session, we can ask questions if we are not clear. Goal 9 is to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. And it's industry, innovation, and infrastructure. We're going to goal 10 now. Goal 10 is to reduce inequalities, and the focus is to reduce inequality within and among countries, to reduce inequality within and amongst countries. Goal 11 is sustainable cities and communities, and this is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. You can see that in all the goals, we're highlighting the fact that these initiatives have to be sustainable. Goal 12 is responsible consumption and production. And this is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns amongst all persons in the globe. Goal 13, which we are very familiar with, is the climate action, and the focus is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. That's goal 13. Goal 14 is life below water, is to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. That's goal 14, life below water. Goal 15 is life on land, and the focus is to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. I will just also want to add that it is to sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reserve land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. That's the focus of Goal 15. And Goal 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. And the focus is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. And finally, we have Goal 17, that is partnership for the goals. And the focus is to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize global partnership for sustainable development. So that is the 17 goals that were vetted through the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as adopted in 2015. So the focus of Agenda 2021, as I already said, is to ensure a sustainable environment, is to ensure that actions are taken towards environmental sustainability. And the overall interest is to look at the social and economic dimensions, look at the conservation and management of resources for country development, to look at strengthening the role of major groups that includes roles of children, youth, women, NGOs, local authorities, business and industries, workers, and strengthening the role of indigenous people and their communities and farmers. And finally, it was meant to attain the Agenda 21, bridging gaps with science, technology transfer, education, and international institutions and financial mechanisms. There were limitations that were highlighted after the appraisal of 2021, and that was what led to the Millennium Development Goals. And part of the limitations were that they found out that there was increased globalization, so they were not able to achieve the purpose, the focus for the Agenda 2021. There was increased globalization, there was widening inequalities and deterioration of global environment. And that led to the development of the Millennium Development Goals. The Millennium Development Goals were established following the Millennium Summit in 2000. And it was to help the heavily indebted poor countries. And it involved at the time, it involved a lot of debt cancellations for countries. And the goals for the goals for the MDGs were just about 8 of them, as is highlighted in my slide, but had 21 targets. So looking at the amalgamation of those two major initiatives or two major agendas, we can say that the 2030 Agenda is a totally inclusive framework that is geared towards solving the world's problems. It was centered on social and environmental needs of our generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. 2030 Agenda has 17 goals, as I have said. It has 169 targets and about 230 plus indicators for measuring the progress of attainment of the goals. Yes, we're in the decade of action, and that is why we cannot afford to leave anyone behind. That is why we are canvassing and sensitizing everyone to be part of domesticating the goals and being part of the achievement of the 2030 agenda. The targets, as I mentioned, can actually be highlighted into 4 principles. And the first one is integrating the goals. The second is universal, creates a community approach, creating a community approach, bringing the whole globe into a community scene where everyone can be part of ensuring the achievement of the goals. The 4th target is to make it inclusive as much as possible based on a world survey involving over 5 million people and signed by all UN member countries. And finally, the center of achieving the 2030 agenda is to leave no one behind. Country progress must help all others, especially the vulnerable countries. Every country, the achievement of if one country is able to deliver on Agenda 2030, and if all countries are able to deliver on Agenda 2030 and one country is not able to deliver, that means overall the globe, the whole countries haven't delivered, because we're supposed to ensure that all member countries deliver maximally on Agenda 2030. So what are we saying? There's a caption here by Mahatma Gandhi. He says, everyone wants a change, but nobody wants to change. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. There's a part for everyone to play. There's a part for everyone to play. Just drinking your bottled water and ensuring that that can goes for recycling is a little part, but you are doing something. There's a part for you to play. Everyone has to arise to do their part to ensure that Agenda 2030 is achieved. When we say we are leaving no one behind, let's look at what has been obtainable before now in the country. You know that waste generation has been on the increase. But what are we canvassing? We are canvassing that the economy must leave the straight line type to circular economy, where we maximize all the R's. We recycle, we reuse, we reproduce, and ensure that waste is minimized to the barest minimum, and all hands must be on deck to achieve that. I heard somebody that was saying that they now translate their kitchen waste into manure making. Do you understand? For little gardens right in their house. The evangelism this morning is that everyone has a part to play towards achieving Agenda 2030. There's a part to play. You must find out what you need to do as an individual. We should stop pointing fingers to the government, to those in academia, to everyone else aside from ourselves. We must wake up. In the last session, I had a poll where I had to engage participants, but I'm so sorry, I'm not able to do that now, but I'll be ready for us to engage during the Q&A session. So the pillars of the goals are social, fighting poverty, social justice, peace, promoting diversity, promoting quality of living, access to healthcare, education, community development, cultural heritage, and some aspects of religion. That's the social aspect of the 2030 agenda. It has the economic aspect that is focused on ensuring companies have the ability to contribute to economic development and growth, support environmental protection while producing. While companies are producing, they are supposed to support environmental protection and minimize the degradation of the environment, and ensure recycling of products and the use of renewable energy instead of the use of gas and gasolines and crude oil that will increase the release of carbon into our environment and further degrade the environment, leading to climate change, which is part of what the Agenda 2030 is fighting. And the final one is the environmental component of the 2020 goal, which is to protect the environment by reducing the risk and measuring environmental impacts of companies and activities. Like I mentioned before, the primary focus, the central focus of the 2030 agenda is leaving no one behind. I believe that issues bordering on climate change must be driven both individually and collectively, leaving no one behind to reduce carbon emission. Leaving no one behind is central and key to the transformative promise of the 2030 agenda and its SDGs. The take home for all of us is that we must be advocates for SDGs. Pick one of the Sustainable Development Goals and decide to be an advocate for that goal and ensure its domestication. In conclusion, I would like to say that the whole world must be brought into a community. If attainment of the 2030 agenda must be accelerated globally. Like I said, it's not about one country achieving the SDGs, but it's about the whole globe achieving the 2030 agenda. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow, this was power packed. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you for the insightful session. And like you ended with, we must take the move to make the change. And you use the word, I'm going to say it again, wake up. So we all have to wake up and get into action and become the advocate and innovators around the goals. Please, if you have questions, can you use the comment section to quickly drop your questions and ensure that you also, please, let's quickly do that. Definitely, I know that doctors still have something very urgent to catch up this morning. And I'm also going to say this because it's not like, okay, let me just say that directly. There is a task which I'm going to give everyone, which we all have to do. If you don't do it, it's still going to fall back on you but if you do it, it's going to help you because it will give you more marks. You have to be able to categorize the 17 SDGs or classify the 17 SDGs under each dimensions and pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals. Take, for example, we have the social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability. You have to be able to classify the 17 goals under each one. And also, you must be able to categorize the 17 goals under the 5 P's: people, planet, prosperity, partnership, and peace. So, and the easiest one is when you are talking about peace, you just relate that one to SDG 16. And when we are talking about partnership, you relate that one to SDG 17. So you have to go and do the other ones yourself. And you can do it as a team. That's why we have the team, the breakout teams for us to communicate and also advocate them more. So I don't know if you have questions. Mr. Starr, kindly share with us before. Okay.
I don't know if we can ask everyone. I think we are just few on the call. I don't know if participants can type on the chat box and let us know which of the SDGs they are pursuing and what they are doing about it.
Okay.
Yes, let's know which of the SDGs, maybe some of them are pursuing the attainment of 2 or 3 or 1. Just type the ones you are pursuing and what you are doing about it. Just type in the chat box and maybe the conversation can start from there.
I might have to share my screen because they are all joining from YouTube. They're all connecting from YouTube. I might have to share my screen.
Okay.
So the question Doctor asked just now, she asked that which of the SDGs are you pursuing and what exactly are you doing to implement that particular goal which you are advocating for? We have some people that take, for example, maybe you've been advocating on climate action. What exactly are you doing? Is it that you are teaching students, or is it that, okay, I think we already have some answers. Please just, the main thing you have to put is the priming goal, the major goal, then your actions. What are the actions you are putting in place to achieve those goals? Why I also share for Dr. Yes, I don't know if you can see it from your hand, Doctor. We have some coming up.
Okay, someone said gender equality and quality education.
The very first
but they are not adding what they have done or what they are presently doing. We are in the decade of action, and action is what we must do, and action is what we want to see. So if you have chosen a goal, is there anything you've been doing about it? What have you been doing about it? Have you been creating awareness, or whatever action you have been taking that is solution based? Maybe you can share with us so that you can encourage other persons that are on the call.
Okay, we have a comment from
It's
Peter.
running very fast. Maybe you should read from your end. It's running so fast and I'm not able to.
5, quality education and gender equality. Currently implementing inclusive projects in secondary school. And we also have another person, Stephen.
That's laudable. That's great. That's
so
great.
I've made some
creating awareness and sensitizing those in secondary school for the 17 SDGs. That's great.
So we also have SDG 13 from Stephen. I have made some presentation on the need to use renewable energy to save our planet. Yeah.
That's great too. That's great too. Please just ride on. Just keep on putting yourself out there, and in no distance time, you will see that some level of rewards will come for you. The publicity is very important, and everyone must play their part to ensure the delivery of this Agenda 2030.
So we have a comment from Monsura Mowumi, SDG 3, 4, and 17, currently working with an NGO as their partnership manager for project based on SDG 3 and 4. Then I go for health outreaches and volunteer for education projects under an NGO. Then we also have...
That's great. That's great. I want to also encourage everyone on the call to do some level of volunteering. That is the only way to give back to the society. Do you understand? And it counts a lot. There's an exchange program I filled in for not too long. And when I saw the emphasis that was placed on volunteering, I was surprised. They said close to about 3 of the essays were based on the volunteering you've done in the past and what you think about volunteering. And I think that it is important because it is sacrificial. It shows that you're a selfless person. You understand that you're not self-centered. So I want to encourage all the youths on the call to look for spaces, look for initiatives where you can volunteer and give back to the society.
So thank you very much, Doctor. From Shiamaka, I'm pursuing Go 3, good health and well-being. I give content on health-related matters on social media, and you see I'm a medical student. I have an idea.
You see that everybody has something to do. The space to help domesticate the 17 SDGs is endless. It's endless, and I pray and hope that more persons are going to cash into this opportunity. Do you understand? From your remote space, you can do something to have global impact. And I hope that a lot of the persons that are listening to me are going to do everything they can to play their own part. It is no longer time to point fingers. It is now time for everyone to arise and take action, because we are in the decade of action. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we also have from account B, she said, SDG 13, climate action. I'm advocating for the reduction of plastic pollution in my school through a campaign called Plastic Wise Campaign. I think I have heard about that as well. And
excellent. Please drive it with everything that is in you. Drive it with all your strength. That is extremely good.
We have Uncle Shem. Mine is Go 6, 8, and 9. For Go 6, I'm giving out sanitary pads to young teenagers. For Go 8, I've been teaching digital skill. For Go 9, I'm working on innovation to save my community.
That's great. A community-based project. I want to also advise and counsel that if there's anything you're doing towards attaining the SDGs, please try to have them documented, because the day you might be called upon to discuss your impact or highlight your impact factors, you might not be able to put them together. So just continue to update all the impacts you're making, everything you're doing towards attaining these global goals. Ensure that they are documented so that you can look at them sometimes and see gaps that might have been created and see how you can close them up. Do you understand? When you look at what you have documented, what you have done, from there you can bet more research opportunities and more opportunities for you to close up on gaps in what you're already doing. For you know, you are fine-tuning and becoming better, making more positive impact in the society. Thank you, Manuel.
All right. I won't like to take much of your time. Let me just read 2 more. We have one for Victoria Anima Shaun. Goal 3 and 4, use of menstrual pads dispenser with biodegradable pads with.
Wow. I'm hearing
public
about degradable parts for the first time. Oh, yeah, great.
To public school girls to reduce absentees of girls from school during their menstruation. Hello, doctor.
The biodegradable parts your use of girls from school during their menstruation schools, which is where we actually have degradable parts are. That's beautiful.
So the very last
somebody is driving almost 5 goals.
Yes.
I saw someone driving almost 5 goals there. As you see, this is so beautiful. I think this is the cruise of the presenter. This aspect is so beautiful. See what all of you are already doing. Do you understand? So with what we have done today, I want to encourage everyone to drive on very hard towards making impact and consolidating on what you're already doing. It's good to know that we are all working. It's good to know we're all working. We did an accreditation recently, and my project was actually showcased as the only community-based project. Do you understand? When you do projects that are community-based, it means you are ready to use your expertise to solve local and indigenous problems. Do you understand? And sometimes you find out that as you begin to close up on gaps on the research you're already doing, that research, your project can be pushed towards entrepreneurial development, where you are able to translate problems into sellable products. Do you understand? And I hope we all get there, where you're able to translate local problems, indigenous problems into sellable products. And I don't know if we got that. Do you understand? Using your expertise to solve community-based projects or problems, and translating those problems into solutions that are sellable, that are fundable. Do you understand? And it's when you start documenting your impact, that is when you are able to check out on the gaps, close them up, and you get to a point where the solutions become sellable. Do you understand? It's actually problem solvers that are making it very good in the field of research. So I encourage everyone to keep on documenting what they are doing, keep on putting yourself outside there, and keep on making impact, and see how you can translate what you are already doing into sellable solutions. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the time. Really appreciate, despite the very busy schedule for today, you still took out the time to be part of the event. I know that definitely you're also delaying some other people there, but we really appreciate the sacrifice, man. It means so much to us. And on behalf of the Leadership Council, we want to say thank you. And we always hope to have you back in our masterclass session. And we wish you journey messages.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, and thank you to everyone that is on the call. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Enjoy the remaining part of the session. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, bye. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
So the attendance link is going to be shared shortly, and please let's ensure we all fill the attendance, and most importantly, the evaluation part. The evaluation, it's part of, these are things that help us to get your feedbacks and to see how we can serve you more. And if there are other areas which you feel is not part of the modules, I mean the 9 modules for this masterclass session, you can put it in the evaluation session. All right. And right about now, I will quickly give some information as regards the current phase of the masterclass session which we are running. There are some major activities which we are going to be having. Please, just in a minute, shortly, I'll be back. All right, sorry about that. We quickly do a recap on what I said earlier. I said you have to be able to categorize the 17 SDGs under the 5 pillars of sustainable development. That's the people, partnership. We have the able to categorize the 17 goals under each of these pillars. And also when we talk about sustainable development, social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability, you have to be able to categorize it. Sometimes, like we always argue this in the academic space, that SDGs are interrelated. There are some SDGs that you can still categorize under social and environmental. And also there are still some, okay, take for example, when we talk about clean water and sanitation, we can categorize access to clean water as the social, under the social sustainability, and you can also categorize it under environment. It's interrelated. And another thing which I would also like to speak on this morning is regarding the water platform. All the 36 states plus FCT making 37, we have the water platforms in which you have to identify your own state, join your state. I know that issues last week, and some were, I think people that are meant to be on Kogi were moving to Katsina. So the new link has been shared. Please endeavor you are on the right plan. You are working, maybe you are working in Lagos and your family or your major base is Benin. Please ensure that you join Benin. Definitely, when you want to carry out development projects, you are going to carry out your development projects in Benin, Edo State particularly. So use at the end of the program. Then I'm also going to speak about the state reps. We have some states that do not have a representative. It's totally wrong. You are wrong. Your state is, I won't say you are at risk, but it's very important before the end of today, ensure you appoint a representative and let the representative reach out to the program manager. And I will also mention that the first assessment for this program is going to hold next week. I think that should be 3rd, if not 2nd of February. This is going to be communicated to you over the weekend. And also we are, as part of our learning process, the academy, which we all have to study, we all have to learn from. We have to keep learning and relearn. So it's very important for each and everyone to be part of, to ensure you enroll in some of those courses. They are going to share like 10 with you. Definitely you have to see the ones that are of major interest and also in line to the SDGs which you are advocating for. And please, let's all ensure we use this medium to network with each other. It's fine. You can even decide to have a physical meet and greet section in each of your states. And you can decide to have your virtual meetings. Let's ensure that we all make use of this moment to network and connect with each other. And if you have any question, you can reach out to the program manager or you speak to your state representatives. Your state representative is going to communicate with the program manager. I believe it's been a wonderful session today. We've had wonderful sessions today. Next week, Friday, is our next masterclass session. I wish you a wonderful weekend ahead and fulfilling moment. Enjoy the rest of the day.
We can be.
We must be.
The first generation to end extreme poverty.
The generation
Most determined
To fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done.
The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone. Everywhere.
With no one left behind.
We will live in a world
Where nobody
anywhere lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
where no one wakes in the morning
Asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die.
Diseases we know how to cure. And where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world where
everyone goes to school
and education gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
we will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive
and be powerful
and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is headed back. We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets at home,
at school,
and at work.
We will live in a world
where there is sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper and new wealth
Lead to decent jobs
for everyone.
and we will live in a world where our industry,
Our infrastructure and our
Best innovations
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
where prejudices and extremes of inequality
Are defeated
inside our countries,
and between different countries.
where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back
What we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back
the
from
threat of climate change.
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
will restore
And protect life on land,
The forests,
animals,
the earth itself.
with peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
and the justice rules.
with everyone equal before the law.
where all countries and we their people,
Work together.
partnerships of all kinds,
to make these goals
A reality.
These are the United Nations global goals
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Let's make it happen.